Hi guys, welcome to the first episode of Valley Talks. It's Bree, your host, and today we are going to be going over my testimony and how God can use broken people. So, to start off, I grew up in church like a lot of people do. I grew up in a very Southern Baptist church, and I would go to church every Sunday with my parents. I would go to church on Wednesdays if they had Wednesday nights, and I would go basically and just go for the candy or for the coloring books that I would get. And I'm very thankful that my parents helped me grow up in a church where God was always around and God was always shown to us, but I was never taught the relationship aspect of it. And that's not my parents' fault because my parents did what they knew how to do, and it was their first time. I'm the oldest. It was the first kid that they were ever having to even try to teach God to. But I got baptized when I was 5, actually in Naples, and then I didn't really think anything of it because I was just 5 years old and I just cared about going outside and playing with my friends. And fast forward a few years, I went to high school and I was playing every sport that you could think of. I was playing basketball, track, volleyball. I was kind of starting to get around the wrong group of people. And I feel like as a Christian, it's very important to surround yourself with holy people who are trying to be more like Jesus every day, which we'll get to that on another episode. But so I started playing basketball and volleyball and track, like I said, and then I even tried cheer for 2 weeks, but that didn't work out. And I started going to parties, which are just high school parties, nothing extreme. And I started hanging around a lot of people that would smoke and a lot of people that would dress maybe not the right way that a lot of Christian women should uphold themselves and as they're dressing every day. But I started to kind of use my body as a way to get attention. And I just felt like, okay, that's what people noticed. That was the first thing that anyone would compliment me on was my body. So it's like, okay, let me just amplify it more. And let me just, maybe not cover up as much, and maybe then I'll get the guy I like, or I'll get the attention from my parents for not listening. And kind of segueing on that a little bit, me and my mom didn't have the best relationship growing up. We have a great relationship now, and it's growing every day, but we didn't have the best relationship. And I think as a parent, when you have a child, if you're having a girl for the first time, I think you can kind of throw your insecurities out onto them, not even realizing it. And she would just say some things that maybe weren't the nicest, but I also would kind of use that as fuel to do the stuff that I was doing even more. And then she would make comments about how I needed to be home by a certain time or how I needed to dress a certain way. And if I didn't dress that way, then I was this type of person. But I would use that, like I said, as fuel to kind of make me feel okay about what I was doing. And so we started off just not the best relationship, and that was obviously partly my fault too. But going off of that, then taking that and also being around the wrong people, it's like, okay, don't have the best relationship with my mom. And then also on top of that, not close to God, just go to church because I'm supposed to. And then on top of that, it was like I'm putting myself in situations where God is not there. And it's only a situation where something can happen and I can get tempted. And so I would go to high school parties and then I would drink, I would smoke, I would try to get attention from men, and I would try to just live my life because I thought that I could just ask for forgiveness and then that would be good enough. And I was just asking for forgiveness to be forgiven and not really surrendering and allowing Jesus to change me. And I thought that all I had to do was just repent and then I could just go back and do it. And it could just be a cycle that I could just go through each day, which is not the case. And after I got out of high school, I graduated. I went to a community college where I played basketball. I didn't even want to play basketball there. It just kind of worked out that way. And that is where Oh, wait, let me backtrack a little bit. So, my senior year of high school, I started hanging around a lot of women that were gay. And at first, I was like, not even thinking anything of it. And it's just kind of a stereotype in the basketball community that every woman that plays is gay, which is not the case. But when you surround yourself with those types of people and people that are living that lifestyle, whether it be smoking, drinking, same sex attraction, you start to think it's okay and also think that you can live in that life, which is not the case if you're a Christian. And so I started, one of my really close friends was gay. And at first I was just, didn't think anything of it, but it's kind of like, now I feel like not everyone's gonna know what this is, but it's kind of like when you it's this analogy that my dad always told me growing up. It was like, okay, if you put a frog in boiling water, they're gonna jump out. And they're not gonna realize that it's hot. Or no, if you put a frog in boiling water, they're gonna jump out because they're gonna realize that it's hot and they're not gonna wanna stay there. But if you put a frog in regular water and you slowly turn it up, by the time that they realize that it's boiling, they're gonna be dead. So you can take that as Satan, for an example. Like, if he just immediately shows you what's gonna happen whenever you fall into this sin, you're not gonna do it, or you're gonna be less likely to do it. But if he slowly turns it up, slowly just adds different things, which for me was, my best friend was gay. That was the start of it. And it was just slowly getting me to the point where I would eventually think it was perfectly fine. When at first I was like, no, it's not okay to be gay and be a Christian. Which, that is a very touchy subject, but it needs to be said. Because especially nowadays, it's very talked about that it's okay, and it's not. Now, does it mean that you can't love someone that's gay? No, you can love someone that's gay. It's kind of how they say love the sinner, not the sin. But after my senior year of high school, I was friends with this girl, and she started to get really close with me, and her sister was gay. So we would always hang out with them. And so it just kind of became this normal thing for me that I just always saw people that drank and smoked and were gay. And it just became a norm. And when you start to put yourself in situations where it becomes a norm, you're going to start to think that nothing's wrong with it. And one night, we were supposed to be hanging out, and we ended up not hanging out. And I went over to this guy's house, who I was kind of talking to, but I wasn't really talking to. It was just kind of one of those situationships. And I ended up sleeping with him, but I allowed myself to get not persuaded, because you end up choosing your own path and you choose what you do. But I got peer pressured into sleeping with this guy, and I remember after I left his house, I was like, what did I do? Like, why did I do that? And it was one of those kind of decisions that you make that after you do it, you're like, what the heck? But in the moment, you didn't think anything of it. And then after that, me and this girl that were best friends, we kind of broke off a little. And it was just this cycle of, okay, I lost my virginity already, it didn't really matter. So what does it matter if I do it again? And I just kind of looked for this thing in the world to fill my void that I had inside of me, which started because I didn't have my identity in Christ. And I didn't have a good relationship with my mom. And I didn't really talk to my earthly father. So how could I talk to my godly father? And I just looked for different things, which were alcohol, weed, sleeping around. And then I ended up going to more parties in college, and I one night went to this party where I ended up getting in a situation where I wouldn't have gotten in if I didn't put myself in that situation. But I ended up getting roofied, I think it was called, or drugged or whatever. And I woke up the next morning, and I was in a bed, and I didn't know where I was, which, is, I feel like, happens to a lot of women. But then after that happened, it was like, okay, now it really doesn't matter, because I just kept getting myself in situations where it was just like, it felt like the Lord wasn't with me and the Lord wasn't protecting me. And then I wasn't I didn't have my identity in God, so I just kept looking for things to fill me, but then also at the same time felt like God wasn't protecting me. So it was just kind of this nonstop battle of like looking for someone to protect me, but also not thinking that he could protect me. And then I went on about my life and just kind of lived that sinful life for a while. And then my one of my close friends, like I was saying, she was gay, and I got introduced to one of her friends. And then she just started flirting with me, and it was like innocent at first, and I didn't think anything of it. And it was kind of like the frog in the water. It just slowly kept going. And I think it was about probably my sophomore year or my freshman year going into my sophomore year, that summer, is when I downloaded Tinder. And no one knows this. I'm about to get very real. Only my brother knows this. Not even my parents know. But downloaded Tinder, and I don't even know like what came over me. It was kind of just this, oh, why don't you switch it to like boys and girls? And I was just like, yeah, why don't I do that? And this is where I need to point out that not all of your thoughts are your own. Satan will put thoughts into your mind to try to get you to slip and fall and think that it was yours, and that's where you have to keep those and you have to take them captive and you have to not allow them to affect you. But anyways, so I had that thought, which clearly wasn't my own, and I ended up falling into it, and I had that and I switched it, or like I clicked over to where I could allow it to be women and men. And I think it was more of just this like attention seeking, and I also didn't have the best relationship with my mother, which this isn't her fault, but it was kind of like I was looking for this nurturing aspect. And so you find that in women, because like if I'm not getting that part from my mom, then I'm going to look for it in a woman because it'll have the same effect. So the very first time, hung out with a girl, thought nothing of it, and then I ended up like going into it, and I was like, oh, this is my third person, like this third girl that I've hung out with, like maybe I am gay, maybe I am. And it was just a cycle where it started by just my best friend being gay, and then it slowly just went further and further, and the water just kept getting turned up and turned up. And then next thing I know, I'm in a 2-year relationship with a woman. And this relationship, I was the most depressed and the most anxious and the most just like, I was just suffering every day. I literally did not want to live. I hated my life. I kept doing things which to the outside world would look like I was living the best life, but I was not. And I was modeling and training, and I was getting jobs. I was doing New York Fashion Week. I was doing Miami, and it was just this like, oh, I'm happy because I'm getting all the worldly things that I need, and I'm happy because I'm getting money, or I'm happy because I'm in a good relationship. And I ended up going to everyone that I could think of that would tell me it was okay. Because if I went to my brothers, or I went to my mom, or I went to anyone in the church, they would be like, no, it's not okay. So I picked and chose who I would go to so that they would basically reassure me that it was okay. And this whole time in the relationship, it was almost like the spiritual warfare that I had going on, where like I knew it wasn't okay, but I also didn't care, because I was like, God wasn't there for anything else that happened to me, and so why would he care? And why, like, where is he? And I just didn't care, and I just had that attitude of just like, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, he's not taking that away, and why does it matter if I'm with a girl? Like, it's really not that bad. I think it's just an old saying. I think it's just an old verse in the Bible. The Bible's old. Why would we go off of what it says? It's written by a whole bunch of old people. It was written so long ago, which is what a lot of people like to say. And at this time, my whole life, ever since I was 5, I never prayed really. And if I did pray, it was more to just like, God protect me tonight, or thank you for my food. And it wasn't anything specific, and I never really like got in my secret place with him and actually got to know him, because I didn't want to. Because I was living a life of sin that I knew if I got in my secret place with him, or I got in that prayer mode, that I would get convicted even more than I already was, because I already had the spiritual warfare going on, which is why I was so depressed and so anxious. And I got convicted when I did things, but I just didn't care. And so fast forward in the relationship, the 2 years go by, and this last April, or no. Yeah, this last April, April of 2023, actually, I got baptized, but I wasn't in the church really. I just kind of went to church where my parents were, and I just kind of went to just, I guess, go so that I could say I was going. But I didn't really have a relationship. I just went to church on Sunday, left, and then that was the end of it. I didn't listen to worship music. I listened to so much worldly music, which has a big effect on what you think. And I was just it was a routine of the things that I did. And then started, I think my spirit knew that I needed to figure something out because I wasn't getting anywhere and I was not living how I should be. And I started talking to people that I used to know when I lived down here a while ago. And I started talking to them about like just church and what they thought about, being gay and all of this stuff. And I ended up getting baptized in April. And I didn't realize this until probably a month or two ago, just that I wasn't really getting baptized because I wanted to leave my old self behind. I was getting baptized because I wanted the Lord's attention. And I wanted the Lord to see me and to help me and to move me in a different way and basically take me out for me. And the Lord does not do that. You have to surrender yourself. You can't just ask for forgiveness and expect him to like take it away, because he will forgive you, but you have to surrender in order to get out of the situation that you're in. And I wasn't doing that. I wanted him to just, okay, I'm gonna go under the water, I'm gonna hold my nose, and I was like, okay, Lord, just take it away. And he didn't do that, obviously, because I wasn't willing to give it up, and I wasn't willing to allow him to change me. And I would say that it was an eye-opener for me, and stuff started to fall into place after that because I started to change my views. But it wasn't because I was surrendering at first. And it was a big eye opener, I would say. And it's just crazy to think about like where I am now and where the Lord brought me from, because he brought me from this like dark place where I never thought I would be. And then it's just crazy. But God's amazing, honestly. He's always there for you even when you don't think he's there. And after I got baptized, he brought people into my life that I needed. And it was just he brought people into my life that I needed, and he brought them right when he knew I would want them. And I got baptized, and as I said before, I'm a trainer. So I was working at this gym down here. I met this guy, and I started working there in May, and got baptized in April, but I didn't leave what I was doing behind. I came back up, and I was still living in that sin, and I was still doing what I shouldn't have been doing, but like waiting for God to take it away, which I have to surrender it before he will take it away. And after that happened, I would go back and forth because this person didn't live here. This person lived in a different state. And I would visit them, and then I would come down here. And I lived like a double life, like Hannah Montana. But I lived this life where I was one person down here. I was who people wanted me to be down here. And then I was a different person up there with this person I was seeing. And I started to want out, but I didn't know how to get out. And I feel like sometimes the Lord, he needs you to hit rock bottom to see that he's the rock at the bottom, and that that's the one place that he'll always be, and he's always there for you. And if your foundation is not built on him, that it's going to fall every time. And I feel like for me, it took me hitting rock bottom, unfortunately, but it doesn't always have to be that for people. So if you can get to where you need to get without hitting rock bottom and getting that low place, then I recommend it. But it doesn't work like that for everybody. Sometimes people need to hit rock bottom. And for me, I needed to hit rock bottom, and I was in a very abusive relationship. And my rock bottom was being abused, and kind of that was like my awakening of like, what the heck am I doing? Why am I doing this? Like, why did I put myself in a situation to have this happen to me? And then part of me was like, God, why would you let that happen? And now I see the bigger picture. But when I was in the moment, I didn't see the bigger picture. But God is always working everything out for his glory and for the bigger picture. Anyways, so I feel like it's just crazy. Like, going over the story of my testimony right now, it's so interesting to see how he had this big picture planned out for so long, but I literally had no idea what was going to happen, had no idea what I was going to do with my life, no idea where I was even going, didn't really care, didn't know what I wanted, and now God is using me as a vessel to try to reach people. And it just shows you that God always has a plan for you. You just have to open yourself up and surrender so that he can use you as a vessel to reach other people. And after I got out of that abusive relationship, came back down here, and I didn't know what I wanted, but my soul was hungry. My soul was so hungry for the Lord and just for something that would fill me, because I'd tried everything. I'm pretty sure it's a song too. It's in the beginning of a song. It's called I Searched the World, but it couldn't fill me. I literally searched the world. I searched everything that you could do. I did everything that you could even think of almost, and that did not fill me. Because there's a void inside of you when you're not finding your identity in the one who made you, that you try to fill it with these other things, but they're not going to fill it. And I searched everywhere, high and low, for everything that I could think of to make me happy and fill my void. And that didn't do it, obviously, because the only one that can fill the void is Jesus. And I just started trying to figure out what I could do, and I didn't really know where to start, but I also felt like I wasn't worthy and I wasn't clean and I couldn't go back to church, because I was like, oh, dang, I had a girlfriend. I don't even know if I'm gay or not. I slept around. I've done drugs. I drank. Like, Jesus doesn't want anything to do with me. Jesus doesn't want to use me. Like, how can I expect the holiest person ever and the purest person ever to want to use someone like me? And it took me meeting this guy at this gym that I was working at, randomly asking one day because I knew his dad was a pastor, and I randomly asked one day, I was just like, hey, do you know anything about like a young adults program that I could go to? Do you know like where I can go? I know your dad's a pastor. And then like, it's just crazy seeing how the Lord works, because if I wouldn't have moved back down here and if I wouldn't have worked at that gym that I worked at, I don't know where I would be. And I ended up asking this guy on a Monday night, which is when his young adults thing was. I went there, I walked in, and the Spirit was just in this church, and I just immediately felt a heaviness because of what I was doing, and I just started crying. And I just knew right then, it was just a switch that flipped in me, that everything that I had done or that I thought was wrong, and I needed to change what I was doing and walk in a different direction. And I didn't know how I was going to do that, but I knew that I needed to. And I ended up going back every Monday. And I didn't really know where I was going to go with this, but I knew that I needed to change what I was doing because it clearly wasn't working, which was everything of the world. And I started surrounding myself with people that had Christ in them and had the Holy Spirit in them and were walking in the path that the Lord had for them. And it was just a crazy, different feeling that, like, you can tell when someone has the Lord in them and the Holy Spirit in them. And you can tell when someone is walking in the path that God has for them. You can see it in their eyes. And it's just this pure and innocent, like, just look. And I started going and surrounding myself with those types of people. And then I ended up going to a Sunday service. And I don't really remember when I went, or if it was with someone, or if I went with my mom first. But I ended up going to Sunday service, and then it just became a routine that I just kept going, and I started just removing myself from the situation I was in and completely turning away. And one night, Monday night, they have this thing called Set Apart, and it's this 9-month discipleship program. And they basically, you get to know the Lord more, and you learn about everything that the Bible talks about, and just how to pursue God and how to know what God has called you to. And I ended up feeling the Lord tell me out of nowhere, which I'd never had the Lord tell me anything before, and I never really knew when he was talking to me. And I ended up having him tell me that I needed to go up to the pastor and ask him if I could join. Now, it literally was already going for 7 weeks, and I just felt the Lord telling me I needed to go ask him. I ended up joining Set Apart. I ended up, now I think I have 4 months left in this program. And over the past like 5 months, I think it was, I have gotten delivered. I don't feel anything towards women. I don't feel like I'm attracted to women. I don't feel like I need to go and drink and smoke weed to be happy. I don't feel like I need to sleep around to be happy or find my identity. And I I just I feel now I do need to say that I do still have days where I feel a little unworthy, and that's where you just give it to God. But I actually feel clean and worthy, and I actually feel like I'm walking in the path that the Lord has for me. But it wasn't until I got to where I needed to be with the church and the Lord, and I actually allowed the Lord to move me, and I actually surrendered enough to let him change me. Because in the past, I was asking for forgiveness because I was scared to go to hell. But this time, I actually asked for forgiveness and surrendered so that he could change me. Because the only way that you're going to get through anything in this life is if you have the Lord by your side. And the only way you're going to be able to do anything in this world for him is if you allow him to use you. And I finally hit rock bottom and just allowed the Lord to change me and use me in a way that I didn't even know he would use me. And I actually am so much closer to the Lord than I ever have been. And a lot of it is because of my prayer time with him. And I actually spend time in my secret place with him. And I actually allow the Lord to speak to me. And I make myself vulnerable. I fast. I allow God to speak to me in different ways, like circumstances or just through different people. But if it wasn't for me hitting rock bottom and actually allowing God to change me, I wouldn't be where I am now. And let me look at my notes really quick, because I had some more that I wanted to say, but here it is. So I was seeking him, but not surrendering. And I was seeking him when I got baptized, seeking the redemption that I wanted and seeking the just the hope that he would take my sin away, but he didn't. And I finally surrendered, and now he's actually changing me, and my heart is getting changed. And I still struggle with sin like everyone else, but it's in a different way. And I now take my thoughts captive, and I now give everything to the Lord. And now me and my mom have a great relationship, and it's because I gave it to God every day. You have to give your thoughts and your sins and stuff that you struggle with to God every day, because that's the only way that you're going to get through this life without falling short and without like just getting anything that you want out of this life and being happy, because joy is found in the Lord. It's one of the fruits of the Spirit. And another thing that I want to say is the verse that I feel like spoke to me the most was Matthew 7:7, and I'm going to read it because it says, "Ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and it will be open to you." And then 8, it says, "For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and the one who knocks it will be open." And that is just saying literally all we have to do is ask and knock, and we will get what we want, and we will hear him, and we will see him, and we will find him. The Lord makes it so easy, but us as humans, we want to look for anything other than the Lord to make us happy and to fill us and to find our identity in. But all we have to do is turn to him and be like, God, I want you. Like, all I want is you. And if we would just do that, it's so easy, but it's something that the world nowadays makes it so hard, or seems so hard. Is like, no, you can't be a Christian. They have all these rules. We might have like things that the Lord wants you to follow, but I've never felt so free in my life. I have literally tried everything, and none of it made me happy. None of it helped with my anxiety, my depression. I was just sad all the time, and now I'm actually happy, and I actually want to help people, and my heart is completely changed. And the only reason I'm like this is because of God. And the only reason I've gotten from point A to point B is because of God. If it wasn't for God, I would not be anywhere I am now. And I didn't even ever expect to be doing a podcast or even sharing about my story, because that's scary. But I just, since joining Set Apart, I felt the Lord tell me that modeling right now wasn't for me, and training right now wasn't for me, and he's called me to speak and to share my story, because I feel like even if it only helps one person, that is better than me just staying silent and not telling anyone. But it is definitely a lot easier than we make it seem. And the Lord just wants to know us, and he just wants to get to know us on a more intimate level, and he wants to just be around us. He's just saying, like, he just wants to be our friend. Like, he just wants to walk by our side. And the Lord never leaves us. The only reason we don't hear him is because we have the radio turned up too loud of the world, and we're not allowing him to speak. Or if he's speaking, we're turning this way or we're turning this way, and we're not allowing God to actually speak to us. And so anytime you feel alone, know that the Lord is always with you, because all we have to do is ask, and he will hear us and we'll receive it. And that right there, that Bible verse is just so important, because nowadays people feel so lonely and they can't find their identity in anything, but all that we have to do is ask, and he will be there, because he's always around us, and he's never not with us, and he's always by our side. And he is working everything for his glory. Because who would have thought little me, Breanna, would be sitting in a chair right now telling people about my story when I had a girlfriend about a year and a half ago. And right now, that is such a big topic that is just talked about so much and glorified. But the moment you say, oh, I got freed from that, I got delivered from that, they're like, you're just not being your true self. No, I'm being my true self in the Lord. And the Lord is who has called me to be this person, is now helping me be this person. And this is my true self, because I'm made in the image of Christ. I'm not made in the image of what society tells me I am. And I'm not made in the image of the LGBTQ or just like smoking and drinking. And that is, it just is so glorified, and it's sad because people that don't know the Lord don't know that over here is so much happier when you find your identity in God. And I just want to end today with a prayer. And I really hope that that story hits somebody and just helps you realize that you're not alone, and that the Lord is always with you. And God can use broken people, and it doesn't matter what you've done. He calls the unqualified, and he wants to use you to reach this generation or just even your family. But I really hope it resonated with somebody, and I'm going to end in prayer. Lord, I just thank you for allowing me to just speak on this subject, God, and I pray that even if it only hits one person, that you just allow it to sink into them and allow it to affect their week, Lord. And I pray that you just help people come to know you more, God. And I pray that you allow them to want to seek your face more and to want to get to know you more on that more intimate level, God. And I just pray that you keep everyone who watches this episode safe, Lord. And I pray that you just allow it to hit anyone that you want it to hit, Lord. And I just pray that you just keep giving me a boldness to speak, God. And I pray that you just allow me to be the vessel, God. And I pray that you just use me to reach this generation, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, I will see you guys next time for the next episode. Have a good night.